There's a specific kind of tired that sleep doesn't fix. You know it. You've probably had a full 8 hours and woken up already bracing for the day. You've probably taken a vacation, a real one, and come back feeling like you never left. You've tried the earlier bedtimes and the no screens rule and the magnesium supplements, and none of it touched the thing underneath. And at some point, someone in your life, a doctor, a parent, maybe just someone who meant well, told you that you were doing too much, that you needed to slow down, that the solution was rest. But here's the part that never gets said out loud. What if exhaustion isn't a failure of your discipline? What if it isn't even about how much you're doing? What if the people who feel the most tired are the ones who are paying the most attention? You don't experience the world the way other people seem to. You walk into a room and you're already reading it. Who's tense? Who's performing? Where the unspoken thing between two people lives. You're in a conversation and you're tracking not just what's being said, but what's being held back. What that slight shift in tone meant, whether the energy changed 2 minutes ago, and why. You absorb other people's emotional states almost before they've fully expressed them, and then you carry that information around with you for the rest of the day like something you can't put down. Other people seem to move through their days lighter than you do. You've noticed it. They don't seem to catch the same things you catch. The barely there tension at a dinner table that you couldn't stop noticing, they didn't feel it at all. The moment a conversation shifted, they missed it entirely. You've probably been told this makes you sensitive, emotional, maybe too much. You've probably wondered at some quiet moment whether something is wrong with your wiring, whether the constant low hum of awareness that follows you through every interaction is a problem to be solved. But here's what nobody ever explains to you. That hum isn't dysfunction, it's data. Your nervous system is doing exactly what it was trained to do. Scanning, monitoring, processing, predicting. It's doing it in every room, on every phone call, in every silence between words. And that kind of perpetual processing has a cost, a real, measurable biological cost. The question isn't why you're tired. The question is what your nervous system has been doing while everyone else was resting. What you're living with has a name. It's called allostatic load. The term comes from the field of stress neuroscience. The word allostasis refers to the body's process of maintaining stability through change. Your nervous system is constantly working to keep you in balance, adapting to every stressor, every demand, every signal of potential threat. Allostatic load is the cumulative wear that process leaves behind. It's not the stress itself, it's the cost of the adaptation. Think of it this way. Imagine your nervous system as a car engine running in idle. In a calm, predictable environment, idling burns almost no fuel. But some people's engines, though for reasons we'll get into, don't idle. They run, all the time, at every traffic light, in every parking lot, even in the driveway at 2 a.m. The car looks fine from the outside, but open the hood and everything is warm. Everything has been working. The research on this goes back decades. Researchers Bruce McEwen and Elliot Steller first formalized the concept of allostatic load in 1993 to explain why chronic stress produces such wide-ranging effects on the body, on sleep, on immune function, on inflammation, on cognitive performance. What they found was that the damage isn't always from a single overwhelming event. It accumulates quietly across thousands of smaller moments of processing and recalibration. And here's the part that connects directly to you. The biggest predictor of high allostatic load isn't the severity of what you've been through, it's the frequency of activation. It's how often your nervous system moves into a state of heightened alert, and how rarely it fully comes back down. For most people, the nervous system activates, responds to a stressor, and then settles. There's a natural rhythm of tension and release. But for people who grew up in environments where the emotional landscape was unpredictable, where you had to track moods, interpret silences, read rooms to stay safe, that settling mechanism gets recalibrated. But not all chronic exhaustion works exactly the same way. There are actually 3 different versions of this pattern, and from the outside, they can look nearly identical. The first is perceptual hypervigilance. You're at a work meeting, not an important one, a routine one, and you notice that your manager's jaw is slightly tighter than last week. You notice that 2 people on the team didn't make eye contact during a certain moment. You store all of this without deciding to. Hours later, you're still turning it over. This version of exhaustion comes from having an overactive threat detection system. The amygdala, your brain's alarm center, has been calibrated to flag subtle social cues as potentially significant. In neuroscientist Joseph Ledoux's research on fear conditioning, he demonstrated that once the amygdala forms an association between a stimulus and a threat, that association doesn't simply disappear. It gets suppressed temporarily. But the detection still runs below conscious awareness all the time. For people whose early emotional environments required this kind of scanning, to stay ahead of an angry parent, to navigate an unstable household, to keep the peace, the amygdala never stopped looking. The second version is emotional processing that never completes. You're driving home, and a small thing happened at dinner, nothing dramatic, nobody exploded. But something felt off. You replay it. You try to understand it from every angle. You're still on it at 11 p.m. This is different from rumination. This is the nervous system attempting to resolve something it flagged as unfinished. Psychologist Bluma Zeigarnik documented what's now called the Zeigarnik Effect, the tendency of the mind to return involuntarily to incomplete tasks. For emotionally attuned people, every interaction that carries ambiguity or unresolved tension becomes one of those incomplete tasks. The mind keeps returning not because you're overthinking, but because something in you needs the loop closed before it can rest. The problem is that some loops, by their nature, can't be closed. You can't resolve what someone else was really feeling. You can't know for certain whether that moment meant something. And so the processing continues, burning energy on a problem that doesn't have a solution. The third version is what might be called relational absorption. You're fine before you talk to certain people, and then you're not. After a conversation with someone who carries a lot of anxiety or bitterness or unspoken need, you feel it in your body. You're heavy in a way that doesn't belong to you. This is the experience of people with what researchers sometimes call high affective resonance, an unusually strong mirror response in the nervous system to the emotional states of others. There's emerging research in the area of mirror neurons and emotional contagion suggesting that some nervous systems are simply more porous than others, more responsive to the emotional broadcasts of the people around them. This isn't weakness, but it is, neurologically speaking, expensive, because every emotional state you absorb has to be processed. And here's the thing that complicates all three of these patterns. The very trait that makes you exhausting to be is also what makes you extraordinary to be near. The same nervous system that is running hot all the time is also the one that catches what others miss, that shows up with the right words at the right moment, that makes people feel truly seen. You have been paying a cost that the people around you didn't even know they were charging. So where did all of this start? Most people who live this way didn't choose a sensitive nervous system the way you'd choose a personality trait. It was shaped, gradually and early, by environments that required a certain quality of attention to navigate safely. Maybe that was a parent whose moods were unpredictable. Maybe it was a home where the emotional weather could shift without warning and you learned to read the signs before the storm arrived. Maybe it was subtler than that. Maybe it was simply never being in a place where it was safe to stop watching. The nervous system is adaptive. That's what it does. When sustained awareness is what keeps you okay, the nervous system recalibrates to provide it. You didn't develop this because something was wrong with you. You developed it because something in your environment was wrong, and your system responded intelligently. But here's the part that changes everything once you see it clearly. The environment that trained this response no longer exists. The surveillance system was built for a house you no longer live in. The alarm is still running, dutifully, scanning for threats in rooms that are, by almost any measure, safe. You didn't learn to stay alert. You learned to survive, and somewhere along the way you forgot those weren't the same thing. The possibility of change, real change, not the kind that comes from trying harder, begins with recognizing that what you're doing is not a character flaw. It's an architecture. And architecture, with the right support and enough time and a genuine commitment to understanding what the wiring was built for, can be gently, carefully revised. There is a version of rest that isn't about sleep. It's the rest that comes from no longer having to explain your exhaustion to people who have never felt it. The rest that comes from understanding why your body has been doing what it's been doing, and finding, maybe for the first time, that the answer isn't too much, but rather not yet safe enough to stop. You were aware. You have always been aware. The question worth sitting with, the one that might take a while to answer honestly, is this: what would it feel like to be somewhere your nervous system didn't have to work so hard to keep you okay?